Hi friends, my name is Angela and welcome to my YouTube channel where I talk all about books. I love reading books, but I love talking about books, maybe just as much as I love reading them. And I definitely love buying books. It is something, one of my favorite pastimes is buying books. It gives me that dopamine hit. I just love it. And there is I think there's like a Japanese word or there's a phrase for people who buy books and maybe don't read them. My intention is to read these books, but they make me very happy all the same when I buy them. It gives me so much hope that these stories are ready and waiting for me at any moment. I love being able to shop my own bookshelf for when that mood strikes or that feeling hits me that I can go pick up a book off my shelf. So I haven't done a book haul video for about 10 months. I think it was last autumn for me. And so these books, I have not gone out and purchased them all in one big hit. These are books that I've purchased over the last few months in dribs and drabs, probably since the Christmas break. I never want to be part of that over consumption culture that is on YouTube a lot of the time where people are just buying, as much as I love to do that. And so I think that's why I haven't really shared a lot of the books that I've purchased over the last 10 months since that last video. But I do want to share these with you because I have some books in here that are genres that I really don't read. I have a recommendation from you that I have bought. And I think at the end of the day, this collection of books is just a really good indication of where my reading is going, where I want to be spending my time this year. So let's get into it. The first one that I wanted to share with you, which I did mention a few videos ago, was I bought the Narnia Chronicles collection. And this is quite hefty. I normally don't go for box sets, but this is such a beautiful box set that I was able to find for a good price in some Boxing Day sales. And they are all hardcover books. They have illustrations in them. I have not read the Narnia Chronicles. I have not read The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. I have not read any of them. And I am excited to read some of these books this year. C.S. Lewis, I have read some of his nonfiction. As with any other classic series, sometimes you really want to take your time and get the right edition. And so that's why I chose this one. But the illustrations in here are lovely. I think it will be a beautiful journey for me this year. So this is this was like a little bit of a Christmas gift to myself, if I'm honest. And I'm very, very excited to be delving into the world of Narnia. They're published by HarperCollins in the UK, and I love the hardcover of them. I love the illustrations of them, and I like that there's no dust jacket as well. Dust jackets are not my friend. This was the perfect collection for me. Another book I bought recently was Walden and Civil Disobedience by Henry David Thoreau. You know I love my nature books, and this is probably one of the most famous books about nature, about being in nature, about maybe a bit of philosophy in nature. I haven't read any of Thoreau before, but I've heard such great things. So this book is described as an account of Henry David Thoreau's adventure in self-reliance on the shores of a pond in Massachusetts, part social experiment, part spiritual quest. And it is most definitely classed as an American classic. I think it's about a 2-year record of when Thoreau built a cabin at Walden Pond, and then he just withdrew from society and just was in nature. And my gosh, I would be okay with that. But so this is something I'm looking forward to, and this was most definitely one of those books where I really wanted to find the right edition for me. And I really love this edition from Vintage Classics, which I think is part of Random House Publishing. But that is something I'm looking forward to. I think this might be an autumnal read for me. I don't read a lot of philosophy, and I think I might get a little bit of that from here. I have read a Thoreau. I read his very, very short essay called Walking. And I really do kind of like his stream of consciousness that was coming out of that. So this is something that I've been wanting to get for a while and finally found the right edition for me. This book I was totally influenced by Kim at Middle of the Book March. This is The Wall by Marlen Haushoffer. This is one book of a collection that Random House, I think they have an arm called Vintage, and they put out a selection of books that are based around conservation and nature and that sort of stuff. And I did read one of the books in this collection, which was The Man Who Planted Trees. Very, very short book, really lovely book. It's a great allegory of what we can do and what we do in nature to hinder it, to help it. And so this is another one in that collection. And this sounds beautiful. Kim at Middle of the Book March really did, I think it might have been in her top books of the year, last year. But this is an interesting premise. A woman takes a holiday in the Austrian mountains, spending a few days with her cousin and his wife in their hunting lodge. When the couple fails to return from a walk, the woman sets off to look for them, but her journey reaches a sinister and inexplicable dead end. She discovers only a transparent wall behind which there seems to be no life. Trapped alone behind the mysterious wall, she begins the arduous work of survival. I think there's like some dystopian vibes, maybe utopian vibes as well, as she creates her own little universe in this solitary world. But I've heard really good things about it, and so that was why I wanted to pick this one up. Taking a little bit of a slant, this is a memoir from Stanley Tucci called What I Ate in 1 Year. And this will be the second Stanley Tucci book that I've read when I get around to it. I did buy Taste and I enjoyed Taste. It made my top 10 of 2023. I loved it. And I think part of that is because Stanley Tucci is such a familiar figure and I can hear his voice as I'm reading. I think this book is exactly what it says. It's about him over a 12-month period and the food he eats, the restaurants he goes to, the people he socializes with. And I really do love those sort of memoirs. And especially because it's Tucci, it probably has a little bit of a Hollywood world vibe to it as well. I'm sure there'll be a number of the name drops happening here like there was in Taste. Whether it's duck à l'orange eaten with fellow actors and cooked by singing Carmelite nuns, steak barbecued at a gathering with friends, or meatballs made by his mother and son and shared at the table with 3 generations of his family, these meals give shape and richness to his days. I just love those sort of memoirs, so I'm looking forward to reading this one. This was something I wanted to get for a while, and I do have the Taste in the hardcover, so that's why I got this one in hardcover as well. This was a recommendation from someone watching. I think it might have been in my goals video where I talked about my ins and my outs for the year. And I mentioned that I wanted to read I wanted to focus more of my energy on books that were life-giving and gentle and hopeful. I didn't want my year to be heavy and dark. I didn't want to be reading those books. And I believe the person who commented on this was someone named Kian, and their comment was, "You asked for it. Here's what I recommend for a comfort, happy book. Leonard and Hungry Paul by Irish writer Ronan Hession. I loved this book and have read it twice so far, once before Christmas and once also after." So I happened to walk into a bookstore the day after I saw this comment, and voila, on the shelf was this book, which I had never seen before at this bookstore I go to very, very frequently. It was published in 2020, so I was really surprised to see it, and I thought, okay, why not? I'll give it a go. This was a debut book from this author, and the tagline of the book is that it asks a simple question, which is, can gentle people change the world? In this truly unique debut, popular Irish musician Ronan Hession tells the story of 2 single 30-something men who still live with their folks and who are nice. They take care of their parents and play board games together. They like to read. They take satisfaction from their work. They are resolutely kind, and they realize that none of this is considered normal. Leonard and Hungry Paul is a story of 2 friends struggling to protect their understanding of what's meaningful in life. It's about the uncelebrated people of this world, the gentle, the meek, the humble, and as they struggle to persevere, the book asks a surprising, enthralling question. Is it really them against the world, or are they onto something? So it just sounded very unique. I don't think I've read a book with this kind of synopsis before, and I thought, why not? Give it a go. So thank you very much, Kian, for that recommendation. This was another book I picked up on a whim in a bookstore, and it is called The Diary of a Tuscan Bookshop by Alba Donati. And normally I stay away from books that are the bookshop this and the bookshop that, because I find that they can be very similar stories, or maybe there's not a lot of plot in them. And this story is about the writer Alba, who was living a fast-paced life in Florence, and for whatever reason she decided to take a step back and she moved back to Tuscany, which may have been her original home and she opened a bookstore, and this is her account of all the things that happened. It says it's inspiring and deeply moving. This is both an ode to the power of reading and a celebration of booksellers everywhere, the true heroes of the literary world. It is written in diary form. It looks like it's probably over like a 5-month period, but something I really loved was at the end of every entry there was recommendations, book recommendations, where she talked about the orders of the day. So she talked about those books that people had purchased. And I just love those sort of things because it gives me another book that I might want to read in the future. There's often a lot of Italian books. I don't speak Italian and I don't know the pronunciations. French is my second maybe not fluent language. But here's an example of some of the orders of the day. Drive Your Plough Over the Bones of the Dead by Olga Tokarczuk. It's an Italian one, which I'm not even going to pronounce. White Fang by Jack London. The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. Loving Frank by Nancy Horan. Learning to Talk to Plants by Marta Orioles. And there's a number of recipes in here, so it just sounds like a really gentle little read. And I thought that sounded like a great little palate cleanser, maybe, between heavier books. And it was originally published in Italian, so this is a translation. I picked this one up just very recently at a new bookstore that's opened up in Perth. I went with a friend of mine and we went and checked out this new store, and I really loved that the editions they had in this bookstore were just so beautiful. But I found this one, which I had never heard of, and it's called The Whale's Last Song by Joanne Fedler. And it sounds like a very nurturing, grounding book about conservation, about nature, about our relationship with animals in the world. It is very poetic, very fairy tale-like, a touching, tender and lyrical fable about what we do for the ones we love and the beauty and mystery of being alive in the world where we are a part of everything and everything is a part of us. This is how it starts. There was a time when the forests and the mountains and the sloping woods belonged to no human. The world was a pulsing heart and each small thing knew its place in this grand scheme, without which the whole machine of it would stop, and all that lived would die. It might be a little bit of magical realism in here, but it just sounded like a beautiful, soft, gentle story. Like it said, a fable, so it's very fairy tale-like. And yeah, I thought, why not? Why not give it a go? And something I found very interesting was it said that the author, she's a best-selling author, but she's also an open water ocean swimmer with a special love for whales, Port Jackson sharks, and turtles. And this is her 15th book. I had this on pre-order for a while and it finally came just a couple of weeks ago, and that is Memorial Days by Geraldine Brooks. This is not a gentle book. I don't think so. This is not in the vein of what I was saying that I wanted to read. This is probably going to be quite hard to read, but Geraldine Brooks is one of my favorite authors. So I thought I'll give this a go. This is her memoir. It's her memoir of when her husband died very suddenly and what she was left with after that. I think it's going to be a really introspective investigation that she went through, and I do want to read this. I really do think it's going to be another book that helps me through my own grief. That's something that I've noticed, is that I do pick up a lot of books that I feel might help me put words to my feelings that I've gone through as I've grieved the loss of my father, and I think this will be one of those books. This is The Librarianist by Patrick deWitt. When I read The Sisters Brothers, and I said that that was my second book of deWitt's that I liked, but it wasn't like, I wouldn't say to you guys, I recommend you go read all of deWitt's books, like I might with someone else, like maybe Geraldine Brooks. I would definitely recommend a number of her books to anybody, regardless of what they read. But a lot of you said that to give this one a go as a third option, and that you really did love this one. I think it really is a bit of a character-driven book, and this is a little bit of the synopsis. Retired librarian Bob Comet thinks his life surprises are behind him. That is, until a chance encounter while he's out on his daily walk changes everything. As Bob finds himself amid a community of strange, new peers, the extraordinary life of this ordinary man comes into view. From a child's runaway adventure during the last days of the Second World War, through true love won and stolen away, and to the purpose and pleasure found in the librarian's vocation. So I saw it on the bookshelf again not long after I had shared that review about the Sisters Brothers, and I thought, why not? I hadn't seen it for a while on the bookshelf, and if I can buy a physical book, I much prefer that over ordering one online. I didn't actually count how many books I have, but I have another 6 to share with you. This is one I bought just the other day, which is Learned by Heart by Emma Donoghue. I really do love Emma Donoghue's writing. I read Room of hers a number of years ago when it came out, and I was captivated by the point of view, by the way she wrote. She really does get into the meat and bones of a character. And I haven't read another one of hers yet, but something I love about her books is that there is always a slight twist in them somehow. Another story of hers I do know, but I haven't read the book, I saw the movie, was The Wonder, and that was incredible, but it definitely had that twist. And so I'm looking for that in this book. It was published in 2023, so it might be her most recent release, but it's about a coming-of-age story of two young girls who fall in love. The era, I think, is the early 1800s, so it's going to be quite challenging in that sense. But the synopsis is, in 1805, 14-year-old Eliza Raine is a schoolgirl at the Manor School for Young Ladies in York. The daughter of an Indian mother and a British father, Eliza was banished from Madras to this unfamiliar country at the age of 6. At the Manor School, she keeps her head down and follows all the rules until the arrival of a charismatic and fearless new student, Anne Lister. The two outsiders are thrown together, and soon Eliza's life is turned upside down by this remarkable woman. It's definitely a trope that I have not read before, or if I have, it's maybe one book a long, long time ago. So I'm looking for a love story. I think it's going to be a really thrilling book that it's going to burn bright, I think, with these two girls who are infatuated with each other. And like I said, I really do love her writing and the way she really does grip you and bring you into that world and that character. Something that has been on my want to read for a while, but I just hadn't picked it up in a bookstore. I think I hadn't actually seen a copy of it that I wanted. They're always the ginormous, you know, those paperback versions that come out that are just enormous when they don't release a hardback copy of the book. They're just so big. And so I often avoid buying books because they are large. I like books that I can fit in my bag easily. And so I finally saw this edition of Crying in H. Mart and I thought it was time to pick it up. This is by Michelle Zauner. My understanding is that this book is about her journey of her mother passing. So it's about her working through that grief. But it also has a lot of elements of family and home cooking. She's a Korean woman and it has a lot of those elements and I'm looking forward to that. I think it's going to be a hard book to read, but I've just heard such incredible things about it that I wanted to pick it up. And again, I think it's one of those books that will help me on my own journey as I read other people's experience with grief. I have a fantasy book that I picked up. Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson. I have not read any Brandon Sanderson. I know who he is. I understand the significance Brandon Sanderson has in the fantasy world, but I've never read any of his books because generally when I look towards fantasy books, they seem to be one of a collection of 5 or 7 or more. When you read the first book, you really are kind of investing that time. But Tress of the Emerald Sea is a standalone novel. It is a fairy tale. They say that people who love The Princess Bride will love this story. And I thought I'd give it a go. Brandon Sanderson is such a heavyweight, and I really wanted to read something of his to understand that. I mean, some of his books I think are the highest rated or most reviewed on Goodreads. There is a huge audience. But this one it's like I said, it's a standalone book. So me reading this doesn't invest me in an entire collection or volumes and volumes of books like Game of Thrones might, or his other series. It does take place in a universe that he has created that is in other books, but it's a standalone story. The only life Tress has known on her island home in an emerald green ocean has been a simple one, with the simple pleasures of collecting cups brought by sailors from faraway lands and listening to stories told by her friend Charlie. But when his father takes him on a voyage to find a bride, and disaster strikes, Tress must stow away on a ship and seek the sorceress of the deadly midnight sea. Amid the spore oceans where pirates abound, can Tress leave her simple life behind and make her own place sailing a sea where a single drop of water can mean instant death. Sounds very original, definitely fantasy, fairy tale. So I don't know, I never go near the sci-fi fantasy section in a bookstore. But the other day, the spirit led me there and I saw it and I thought, now's the time. Now is the time for me to enter a fantasy era. The Winter Soldier by Daniel Mason. I have to admit, a lot of these books have been my process of trying to find a few books for me to take on our upcoming holiday. We're going to Japan, it is winter, it is a snow holiday, and we're currently in the middle of summer here in Perth. So I am looking forward to all the snow, the cold temperatures. I'm very much looking forward to it, which means I'm leaning into some winter books. And this one is most definitely got those vibes, and I think this is going to be one that I do take. I love Daniel Mason's writing. He wrote Northwoods, which was among my top books of 2024. It just sounds like such a gripping story. So it's set in Vienna in 1914. Lucius is a 22-year-old medical student when World War I explodes across Europe. Enraptured by romantic tales of battlefield surgery, he enlists, only to find himself posted to a remote field hospital ravaged by typhus. Supplies have all but run out, the other doctors have fled, but only a single nurse remains, from whom he must learn a brutal makeshift medicine. Then one day, an unconscious soldier is brought in from the snow, his uniform stuffed with strange drawings. He seems beyond rescue until Lucius makes a fateful decision that will change the course of his life. The Winter Soldier is the story of finding love in the sweeping tides of history and of the mistakes we make and the precious opportunities to atone. Now, I think Daniel Mason has, I think his trade is actually as a physician, in addition to being a phenomenal author with the most beautiful prose that I've ever read. So I'm ready to read my second Daniel Mason book. And I do have a third one, which is a collection of short stories on my bookshelf already. But this one I think might be up the top of my selection of books that will accompany me to Japan. When I was in this bookstore the other day, I saw this beautiful little book. I thought it was folklore, to be honest. This is The Forester's Daughter by Claire Keegan, and it's from Faber Stories. My understanding is that they have selected a number of short stories that they have released in these teeny tiny little books. Faber Stories, a landmark series of gem-like volumes, presents masters of the short story form at work in a range of genres. There is Kazuo Ishiguro, P.D. James, Sylvia Plath, Sally Rooney, Robert Aikman, Alan Bennett. There are so many other books in this series, but I had never seen it before, and I thought it was a myth. So this is by Claire Keegan, and to be honest, I would read Claire Keegan's shopping list. Claire Keegan's mesmeric story takes us to the heart of the Wicklow countryside and of the farming family of Victor Deegan, with his 3 teenagers, the milking and the mortgage. When Deegan finds a gun dog and gives it as a present to his only daughter, his wife is filled with foreboding at this seeming act of kindness. As the seasons pass, long-buried family secrets threaten to emerge. Claire Keegan is just wonderful with short stories. I don't know anyone that really comes close to it that I've read, but she puts so much in there. She can, with such brevity, she puts so much information into these stories. So I was really pleased to find this beautiful little book. Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. I have not read any Maggie O'Farrell to date, but Hamnet is something I saw everywhere last year, and I have wanted to read it for a while. Again, it kept coming in those big books, and I didn't want that. I finally saw it in a small paperback version and thought, now's the time. My understanding with this book is that it is inspired by the son of Shakespeare, and Hamnet is one of those sons. And I've just heard such amazing things about it. Maggie O'Farrell as well, I've always wanted to read one of her books. They always seem to be at the top of bestseller lists, her books. So I really am looking forward to reading something finally of hers. And I love this era. I love this Shakespearean era and all that comes with it. And this was a complete whim that I found in a bookstore. And it's called A Mudlarking Year by Lara Maiklem. And to be honest, it was the cover that caught me at first. It grabbed me, but I think this has quite a lot of history behind it. For over 2 decades, Lara Maiklem has been scouring the banks of the tidal Thames looking for objects, lost or discarded, that tell forgotten stories. In this charming sequel to the best-selling Mudlarking, Lara widens her search beyond the river and reflects on her life lived post-pandemic, reminding us that it's possible to draw meaning in the most unlikely of places. A Mudlarking Year is a gentle ode to nature, history, and the simple art of looking. Guided by Lara's curiosity, warmth, and wisdom, it is an invitation to discover hidden objects in the most overlooked parts of the city and reveal stories that are patiently waiting to be told. So she's quite literally searching the riverbanks of the Thames and coming up with these treasures, and I think putting stories to them, finding out where they're from, what they mean, how it got to be there. And I find that sort of stuff fascinating. It reads a lot like diary entries. I just thought it was such an interesting premise. I think she has an Instagram account where it all started from, where she was doing this mudlarking, finding things and finding out what they meant, where they were from, how old they were. But as someone who loves history, nature, introspective journeys. I think this is something I'm going to love. And I don't think that the fact I haven't read her first book is going to be a problem for that. So those are all the books that I have recently purchased. That is my book haul. There's a collection of them, right? I admit I have bought more than usual, and that is partly because I've been looking to find a few books that I want to take with me on my holiday. And when I want to choose those books, I really want 5-star reads. So I'm thinking Hamnet is one I might take. I may take Tress and the Emerald Sea, and most definitely The Winter Soldier by Daniel Mason. But these make me so happy to have them on my shelf. I got some reading to do. So I'd love to hear what you thought about this. There's a real selection of books here, from historical fiction to philosophy to contemporary fiction, memoirs, fantasy, fairy tales, probably young adult. I'm really looking forward to reading them. Let me know what you think. If you've read any, if you think I need to push any up to the very top of my TBR and get to them next, I would love to hear what you recommend. But thank you as always for joining me, and I will see you again soon. Bye.